Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the IFBC here, sponsored by a Sportsbook review at the Gold Nugget. Of course, I am Peter Loshak. This is the second day, Sunday, of the panel discussions, and the topic of today's discussion is just the endlessly fascinating topic that everyone likes to talk about amongst themselves, asking anyone that they can know that they can ask who might have some insights into the men behind the curtain, the men behind the proverbial curtain, the guys who are the bookmakers in all these places. Where we bet. Always interesting to find out what they have to say about anything and everything related to what they do. We're going to talk. We're just going to ask them some open-ended questions for about 30 minutes, and then we will have about a 20-minute question and answer period where we will take your questions. So any questions that you have for any of these guys, write them down, and hopefully we will get to them. Obviously, we could have this panel discussion going on for like 6 hours, and everyone would be fascinated. But we've got 50 minutes right now, so we're going to get to it right now. Let me introduce the panel. Of course, a new addition to the panel sitting next to me, Benji Cherniak, CEO of Don Best. I've known him for quite a long time. Don Best, of course, is a company that goes way back in the industry, and their role pretty much has to change based on the landscape of the industry. Wouldn't you say, Benji? I mean, it's a constant anticipation of what's next in the industry for Don Best, right?
Well, I think that... Is this on?
Here, let me click this one. Yeah, it should be on. There you go.
I think that when you talk about the changes in the industry with the repeal of pass bet has implications for everyone on this panel.
Sure.
And I think we can probably get into that a little bit as we move along.
Yeah, we'll get that into a little bit. And Don Best, of course, started out basically as the go-to line site for bookies, right? And but now it's expanding into a lot of other things. What's new at Don Best, Benji?
I guess if I were to give you the 1-minute overview as to what's new at Don Best, in addition to the Don Best screen, which I assume everyone in the room knows and many of them use, we now have a trading service whereby we're creating our own proprietary pre-match and in-play betting lines for all U.S. sports. We're selling that to legislated bookmakers globally in Europe, in Asia, in South America, in Mexico, and now, of course, within the legislated piece of the U.S.
Awesome. Thanks, Benji. And, of course, the other three guys on the panel, some of you might recognize from SBR videos. They are bookmakers at various casinos here in Las Vegas. First, Chris Andrews. I've done videos with him from the Southpoint Casino. Then we have Tony Miller from the Golden Nugget. And, of course, on the end is Matt Holt from CT Technology, who does lots of very interesting videos with various people at SBR. Okay, so I guess the first question I want to ask you about is just a general open-ended question. Tell us about where you work and what kind of action you take and manage. The volume, the public versus sharp breakdown, the profile of what kind of action you take. Chris, from the Southpoint, you take some sharper action and some bigger bets, don't you?
Yeah, we do. We try to manage the wise guys with on the app. We take less on the app than we do and at the counter. And I always tell guys, if you want to make a big bet, bring your cash, show up at the counter, and we'll go from there. But the guys on the app, and we have some of the sharpest players in Las Vegas playing with us, and we manage them. Between Jimmy Vaccaro and I, we've never banned one customer ever, and we give them pretty fair limits. But enough to make it worth their while to bet.
Right.
But we take like $5,000 in the NFL, which I know that's not a huge bet, but so we take at the counter. We've already have a couple $100,000 bets for the first week, and a couple $30,000 bets in college, and that's just the way we handle it. And Michael Gaughan seems to be happy with it. And that's the main thing. So that's kind of our business model.
So do you find that the app, using the app, makes it easier for you to manage bigger bets and sharp action, or actually makes you more vulnerable to sharp action and bigger bets?
No, I think we enjoy the sharp action. Like I said, it's not huge. $5,000 on the NFL isn't a huge bet,
right? But
we get to know exactly what some of the wise guys are thinking, and we do our best to go in with the wise guy side as often as we can.
Right.
Of course, sometimes that's impossible, but that's just the nature of the business. We do it fairly well, and again, working with Jimmy Vaccaro, who's probably at this point the godfather of all us here, and having Michael Gaughan, who from day one he told me, this is your sports book. If I see something I don't like, I'll let you know, but otherwise I need you to manage it, not me. And Michael almost, I'll hear from him once in a while, but never interfering. He's a great guy to work for.
All right, we'll talk about that a little bit more because everyone's always fascinated about the wise guys, and when you use that term, a lot of people in this audience are thinking, Is he talking about me? Is he talking about me? So we'll talk
sure
about
there's
that.
some
Yeah,
guys
there,
out
there
there
might
right
be.
now.
We'll get to that in a
Whose
second.
play we greatly respect. Yeah, absolutely.
Then next to Chris Angelo, you have Tony Miller from the Golden Nugget. Tony Miller, thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit about what kind of action you take here and manage at the Golden Nugget. Volume, public versus sharp action. What do you do here?
First of all, guys, I'm the director of Sportsbook here at the Nugget. Thanks for being here, skipping church today, hanging out with us. You know what? We're downtown. I'm a freestanding book here. I make my own numbers. We're at this end of the strip. We got all the properties on the strip. We got Chris down the other end of the strip. And down here, there's 5 different companies down here, so there's a lot to choose from. But like I said, I'm a freestanding book here. I make my own numbers, and we take a lot of action. You know, it's good. It's a good thing because I got some opinions I put into my numbers sometimes to create some action, and it's pretty cool. I've been here 12 years, and I get along with upstairs, and there's all sorts of people, a lot of tourist action down here. But I can tell you guys, this right here is the mother of all changes. And, you know, the mobile app now, I got a lot of sharps on the mobile app that I'm going against every day, and a lot of walk-up tourist action. I'm trying to balance games, and it's a pretty cool world right now in this day and age of the mobile app.
All right, that's a great answer, and it will lead into my next question, which we'll get to in a second. My next question is, what is the process for how you open your lines? We'll get to that in a second. You have your own lines. Do you find that the advent of using apps like that makes you better able to manage bigger bets, or makes you more vulnerable to it, like I asked Chris?
You know, it in both ways. But you know, I use this phone, the mobile app, and the sharp action to offset my lines and to move numbers. You know, there's a lot of what we call error moves, and I hate to do that. I like the money to move my numbers, but sometimes, you know, within a matter of 30 seconds, you see a ton of bets coming over the phone, and it's nothing you can void. It's nothing you can stop. They got free will to play, and you have to move real quick. And we put these guys in different categories, how they come over the phone, and it comes in fast and furious, especially on a Sunday morning.
All right. Yep. Cool. And then, of course, Matt Holt from CT Technology also has a little bit of a different space in the betting industry. Tell us what you do at CT Technology, Matt.
So I actually left CG Technology in April.
I apologize.
I started my own company called US Integrity. We're based here out of Las Vegas, but I was with CG Technology for 7 years, and we sort of took the opposite approach as Chris when Chris says, hey, he makes the big bettors come in and put the cash up. We actually used to manage the big bettors on the mobile app because it gave us an advantageous situation of knowing how much money they had in their account. How much money can the big bettors actually fire at you? How much money's available? If they wire in a few $100,000, you can assume that money's coming that weekend. So we used that information of, okay, what sharps have money in their accounts or are wiring in money into their accounts as anticipated action that we would have received that week. And we would give people much higher limits on the app because we got all their information, social security number, and everything else that came along with opening an account. Whereas the person walking up to the counter is sort of an anonymous bettor, and it allowed us to, handle anonymous customers quicker because you were always giving them lower limits over the counter, and then manage your bigger customers on the app. I'm not saying it worked better. That's just how we handled it at CG.
So your company is you're a consultant now for other bookmakers.
No, I'm the president of a company called US Integrity, and we work with sports books and professional and collegiate sports conferences and leagues alike to build customizable dashboards for the purposes of game integrity and data analytics.
Really? So that would be involved with making sure there's no funny business going on? Is that what you're hinting here?
Not just funny business, but abnormalities in lines, wagering activity, especially surrounding injuries, where what was the wagering activity prior to a public credible release of an injury, the wagering information after, and we can identify patterns where, hey, every time a particular player's out, the wagering information tends to leak out prior than the first public source, so there could be locker room leakage. We do a lot of work into just abnormalities and making sure that it's good for both the sports books and the leagues themselves.
So sort of funny business then. Beating right, yeah, right. Vaguely around that in that area, that milieu. All right, so let's talk about the next question. Everyone is always wondering about this. What is the process for how you open your lines? We'll skip you, Benji, because you guys don't do actually any opening lines at Don Best, right?
We don't do any opening lines here in Nevada.
Right.
But via our trading floor, we'd be opening lines for sports books globally. But I'll still defer to those guys.
All right. Okay. Well, let's start. Yeah, let's start with Chris Andrews. You are very well known for opening lines, especially season win totals and futures odds, very early. What's the process for that?
Well, I have I hesitate to call it a math model. Mathematicians would laugh at that, but it's my own calculations that I've kept for about 35 years. I've slowly refined it, and I think it's right now it's pretty good. It gives you a pretty good idea of judging power ratings. Of course, you have to take last year's power ratings and who's coming back. Quarterback, obviously, one of the first things you look at, and a lot of coaching changes, way more in this day and age, and I think that has a big effect, not just head coach, but a lot of coordinators, and of course, what players are coming back, and just adjust your power ratings from there. And I do have a program. I was working with a kid who's a pretty good programmer. We plug all that in to a computer, run it through the schedule, and that's how we get season win totals. But of course, your power ratings have to be as spot on as possible. We open the first week, and then we open games of the year. And in all honesty, we try to bring in the sharp players to help me with those power ratings, because I know there's things you're going to miss. You can't know every single thing out there. So certain guys I highly respect, and I know one of the games this year that moved I think about 9 points. I didn't think much of Michigan this year.
Oh, you didn't?
I did not.
Really? I'm super high on them.
Well, join the club, because I think I opened Notre Dame. I think I opened them 7.
Yeah, 7. That's what I saw.
Week 1.
Yeah.
And I have Michigan 2 now.
Yeah.
So obviously guys greatly disagree with me, but we moved the numbers pretty quick off those opening lines, and I might be wrong. I probably am, but I might be right. And I keep saying, well, let's let them play the game, and we'll go from there.
So it's all in house then. So you don't have any. You don't use. You use other people who work for you, but it's all in house. You don't use consultants. You don't wait to see what offshore books are doing, or
no. And again, I got encouraged by Jimmy and Michael both. They kind of saw my work, and they said, let's go ahead and do it. And I do have 2 guys, and I don't know if they want me to mention their names, so I won't.
Okay.
That do help me out with as we look through the power ratings, and I don't want to talk to them before we actually sit down, because I want them to think independently, and they come, and I highly respect their opinion too, and we just kind of go from there.
Man, so I'm sure people are wondering, like, when you open. Oh, go ahead.
But you have to also, within that, I would assume, while you're setting your own numbers, you've got to be paying attention to the market at large, at least if nothing else, to minimize arbitrage opportunities.
I was really addressing when we first opened. So we're the first ones out there, and there's really nothing else to go against. And I know season win totals, we open every single team, and some guys are starting to do that now too. But I remember one guy, a friend of Jimmy's, came in. He bet his Miami, Ohio over for 10,000. I'm thinking, geez, what? Who else? No one else had the number up. So, and of course they lost their first 6 games last year, and I'm thinking I'm the smartest guy that's ever lived. And then they won their last 6, and I blow the bet. But anyway, But I think, like I said, a few more people now are putting up every single team. But we go first, and like I said, it's not like we make a fortune doing it. We don't. But it's really brought in a ton of business. This is my 3rd year of doing it, and I was looking at the numbers this year, and it's the numbers have just grown dramatically every year. And fortunately this year I don't have anything that's too crazy. But probably about 10,000 is our biggest decision. That's
So what's the liability when you have a line that's that far off, opening a line at 7 and now it's pick 'em or -1? I assume that because of your limits, it's not that big of a liability. But how much does that hurt you when something like that happens?
Well, not that. Like I said, it's 5 figures, but not super bad. And it's Michigan and Notre Dame. I mean, I'm sure we'll have plenty of business by next Saturday night. So we should be evened out a little bit.
All right, so let's go to Tony Miller from the Golden Nugget. What's the process for how you open your lines and you make opinionated lines?
Mine's pretty simple. On a daily basis, the lines on a daily basis. Heck, you come in at 6 o'clock in the morning. You stay in the market with the opening day's games. That's pretty simple to do. Just about anybody can do that, and you move accordingly. What's tough is when being a freestanding book, when we put things out there that nobody else has. And if you go over to the book right now, you'll see a lot of sheets of some stuff that we throw up that are we put our minds into it, and we come up with some things that are kind of unique. The other thing I have, which is, a lot of guys, we all have power ratings, and we all know what to do with our power ratings and adjust them as we go along. but I have a kid working for me, and I'll mention his name. His name's Aaron Kessler, and he's Rain Man 6 times over. You know, the kid's he knows numbers, he knows his analytics. He's really good with numbers, and we can come up with some pretty sharp numbers and pretty good numbers. We think we threw up UNLV's football schedule. We put up every game on the board about 3 months ago, and you know, we're taking some pretty good action to it, local action, of course, on UNLV football games, and there's other things we throw up along the year. You know, we put up a Super Bowl matchups, possible Super Bowl matchups. We throw up all kinds of crazy things, and along with the everyday stuff that we normally book. And again, we have our opinions, and sometimes we create action by going off market a little bit to get some things going, and we always try and get on the same side as the sharp money by the mobile app. So it's grind every day, and it's a business. It's fun.
All right, so you guys have been using a lot of terms, a lot of these terms that people that make people's heads, you know, perk up. Sharp action, you know, wise guys. I want to ask you a question about that. Just an open-ended question in general, in your experience. Of course, Chris Andrews, you're the most experienced guy up here. But let's start with Matt Holt. How has the sharpness of the markets changed in general? I'm assuming that the markets are getting at least a little bit sharper every year, or not. In your experience, in your opinion, how much sharper are the markets getting year by year, and how sharp could they possibly get? Let's start with you, Matt Holt.
I think they're as probably sharp as they've ever been in terms of the amount of work that these guys and myself put into making numbers. And of course, you have to follow the market to a certain degree to avoid arbitrage situations. But the amount of work done by analytics folks on the other side of the counter now, I mean, these numbers are really sharp. And there's so many auto bots and things out there to take advantage of. If any two numbers vary too much, you have the ARB situation immediately. So you're talking about a market that's not just sharp in terms of people doing the analytical work to make better numbers than they ever have before, but so many people looking to take advantage of arbitrage situations that the market's as tight as it's ever been probably in the history of sports betting.
Yeah, go ahead, Benji.
But I would add to that as sharp as the numbers are now, both on this side of the counter as well as in terms of the sharps that are out there that are betting and punting, it's only going to get sharper.
Right.
And the reason for that is the technology is getting better. We're now seeing things like artificial intelligence make its way into the space. We're seeing some of the European technology make its way into Nevada and other parts of the U.S., and for all the flaws of their lack of knowledge of U.S. sports betting, they have some pretty good technology. We're seeing the emergence, as you allude to, with the mobile phone of now the in-play wagering, and all of this is a new wave that's going to, you know, we're still at such early stages of what technology will mean to the industry in Nevada and beyond in the U.S., and all of that will drive how sharp the data is and how sharp the numbers will become.
So that leads me to an answer that I've been asking myself for the past year or two. I guess I'll ask it now. I didn't really want to ask it because I'm afraid of the answer, but you think the markets could get so sharp that eventually all the edges are just gone, and it's basically like playing the lottery where, you know, people still play it, but they know that there's no edge to be had? What do you think, Matt?
I think a lot of the edges in the mainstream sports, and I don't want to say that they're gone, but I certainly think that they've shrunk, that those margins and those opportunities for advantage players have shrunk substantially. What you're seeing is a lot of the advantage players that used to play NBA, NFL, college football sides are either looking to play totals in smaller conferences, or they're looking to play abstract sports now where there may still be that advantage, UFC, WNBA, and things like that, because the mainstream sports, those lines are as tight as they've ever been.
Or the smaller conferences.
But do you think that it'll ever get to a point, as Benji, because Benji, you start talking about AI, that's a whole other box of worms there, artificial intelligence, but do you think you could ever get to a point where it would essentially be like the lottery, where it's something that people would still play, but that it's just generally understood that there is no edge to be had, that they can get so sharp that the edge just disappears?
I think sports bettors will always at least enjoy a better hold percentage, theoretically, that they're going against than lottery players ever will, at least.
All right, let's get to you, Chris Andrews. Chris Andrews, when you started in this business, were they doing everything on chalkboards and whiteboards and stuff? Do you remember those days?
Yeah, thanks for reminding me how old I am.
Well, you said 35
Yeah.
years. You said 30. I take you what you were.
39 years.
39 years. I don't. When did computers start?
Not then.
Yeah.
My first job here in town was at the Stardust, and we had, for those guys that remember, we had the board up top that was backlit.
Yep.
This was like, you know, oh my God, it was so far advanced. Or like I said, we thought we were like the Jetsons. You know, guys had beepers, and I remember beepers came in. I think, oh my goodness.
All right. So of course, the markets have gotten sharper. Back then, you were probably taking long teasers still, right? Back then, when you started out,
we took a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But I have to say, like back then. You go back and look, and it's, you know, a lot of the young guys in the audience probably don't believe us, but we had the point spreads and that a lot of times that was it. Like
Right.
totals was like a new thing.
Right.
And money lines, that was like extremely rare. So, we talk about will the edge ever come out of it? I don't think so, because you're still talking about human beings, and like Benji mentioned, some of the smaller conferences. I mean, and I know we get almost every game on TV anymore, but still, you might know like the Michigan-Ohio State game coming up. It's going to be hard to find an edge in a game like that, but. You get, Appalachian State and Arkansas State, and there certainly could be some information there that maybe we as bookmakers have overlooked in making the line. And I think you'll see a lot of stuff like that. Plus, there's a lot more things in the marketplace now, a lot of props.
Right.
In-game wagering, of course,
Right,
that's
right.
what's, really changed the marketplace again. So I think whereas, like I said, when I first started 39 years ago, 100% of a wise guy's action was on the point spread.
Right.
That's dwindling every year with all sorts of other wagering opportunities.
Sure. All right, Tony Miller, what's your take on this? Have you been noticing the markets getting sharper by the year, and how sharp do you think they can possibly get?
Oh, for sure. I drove into town in 1975. I wanted to go to UNLV, and I can remember driving by Caesar's Palace and thinking of wide world of sports and boxing, and I said, man, I got to get in this business. And boy, did it change fast. In '82, I was running bets between freestanding books with Little Caesars and, Del Mar sports books, and then, we got into the business, and things happened really fast. Stardust opened up. Union Plaza opened up. I started my first job at casino sports book in Caesar's Palace in the mid-'80s, and I can remember back then the first big prop bet that we took on a Super Bowl, Refrigerator Perry. I can remember my boss, Art Manteris, going crazy because we got crushed on that one prop. And from there on, it's taken off, and now you can see where we are today as far as Super Bowl props. You got 35 pages of different props, in-game wagering now, and it's changed so much. It's going to continue to change as we go farther.
All right, so before we get to the Q&A segment of this one, I just want to ask you just an open-ended question. However you want to answer it, go ahead. I'm sure people are always wondering what changes are coming in the upcoming years. The change of pace is rapidly, accelerating. For a long time, there wasn't that much in general change over the markets in the markets. What change do you expect in the coming years, Benji Cherniak? Anything that comes to mind?
Well, so to me, the biggest thing is, and I think that Tony touched on it when he showed his phone and spoke about the emergence of mobile. And if you go back 3 or 4 years ago, there was no mobile wagering in Nevada. And even now, we've only begun to scratch the surface, but for a number of the books, it's over 50% of handle. And within that, you have the emergence of bet types that are more mobile friendly. And that would be things like the player props, more advanced player props, more derivative markets, and of course you have in-play wagering. And the fact of the matter is that from a technology perspective, because we've been more retail driven in Nevada and in the US, in-play wagering has been slow to emerge. But if you look at places like Asia and parts of Europe, in-play wagering can make up 70 to 80% of handle. I have a client in Asia that doesn't even take pre-match bets. It's purely 100% in-play wagering. Right?
Or there's people who see pre-match bets as just also part of in-play wagering. It's just in-play where the game hasn't started yet. Yeah, that it's seen as so you think that in-play wagering is basically going to take over the entire.
I think there's cultural differences between the U.S. and other markets, but do I think that in-play wagering will ever get to the point where it's 50% of the handle? Potentially, but it's as the technology emerges and as we as an industry get a bit more educated as how to manage it, because as you guys know, you become very dependent on third-party services that may not be as sharp in setting lines as you guys are. So it's a bit of a conundrum that's going to emerge over the years ahead, but it's going to be a big part of the story.
All right. Matt Holt, how would you answer that question? What changes do you expect in the coming years?
I think a lot of it's going to be technology driven. The mobile phone and wagering on it. I know when I worked at CG Technology, we were the first people to launch a mobile app in the state of Nevada that you could wager on. And over the last 7 years, that's really become the new thing in the U.S. sports betting is mobile. Wagering on your mobile device, but I think it goes a big step further than that in terms of technology. We're not years and years or decades away from sitting on your couch and turning on your Apple TV and using your Apple Pay to make bets. Those things are going to be here sooner rather than later. In-stadium sports betting in the United States is coming. That's a fact. In arena betting at an actual location in the arena. So technology is driving the way. And we're going to see a lot of new changes, I think, in technology.
Tony Miller, what do you think is on the horizon in the next few years?
Yeah, I agree. We just opened up sports books in Atlantic City and Biloxi. That's all coming. We have a football contest here now where our customers up there will be able one day to go on their phones, join our contest here in Vegas, put their picks in every week, not worry about proxy services. It's all changing really fast with the mobile app, legalized wagering around the country. So it's going to be a good thing. It's going to happen real quick, and it's going to help us out here in Nevada a lot.
You think? Chris Andrews, what do you think? What do you see in the upcoming years?
Well, working at the Southpoint, we just have the one casino. We're not in any of the other jurisdictions, but we are looking to get into some of them, and we've had a couple of meetings around the country. And I don't know if it's always the first question, but one of the questions is, what about the mobile app? Do you guys have that? And of course, we do. And that's everybody's going to demand that in the very near future. Even guys, I think, sitting in the room are going to want to put money on in their account and just bet on the mobile app rather than standing in line. Maybe missing a number or something like that. And just to, we really have not been very aggressive with the in-game wagering. We've had it, but only on the big games. But this year, Michael Gaughan always said, take care of the room first, because we are a casino.
Yeah.
And listen, anybody looks at the gaming figures that come out every month. The sports book is this much.
Right.
Slot machines
Right.
pay everything. So Michael always said, take care of the room first. But now he looked at the in-game wagering. He says, I want you guys to do it. Let's expand that. So I added a couple guys to my team, and we're going to be doing a lot more of that. And, of course, our mobile, Benji, you mentioned the percentage. We're right at about 50%, and it's just going to go up from here because naturally 3-4 years ago it was 0%.
Yeah, and one thing that's interesting, a lot of the places that have in-game wagering, they're, they love it, they love to offer it. They're very scared though of people with better spreadsheets than them, and the odds are terrible. The juice is probably going to get a lot better in upcoming years in live betting, wouldn't you say? I mean, you're not going to see 40-cent spreads 2 years from now with live betting, right?
I don't think so, but right now we and I'll put myself right there. It's a little bit of a learning process for us.
Terrifying.
I wouldn't go quite that far,
Right.
But we know that there's going to be a learning curve, and I no matter what you're doing in life, you always want to look back. Geez, I'm a lot smarter than I was 5 years ago.
Sure.
So we've done it in the past, but not really full force. Now we are quite a bit more, and I'm sure we'll have our ups and downs like everything else in this business.
No, I mean, I just remember when offshore started, there were books that didn't understand that if you offered correlated parlays, you would get beat bad. And I mean, there were books that didn't understand that. And I feel it's the same way with live betting. Like there's some places that don't quite understand how dangerous it will be to offer live betting to the entire world, where some guys have very sophisticated programs that will be able to kill them if they're not careful. And I think there's going to be some people who get burned that way.
There will, but I think also to Chris's point is that within Nevada, the majority of these locations, the evolution of it comes from bricks and mortar.
Right.
At the end of the day, as you allude to, you're taking care of the customer as part of a sports betting experience within the precipice of an overall gaming experience within a casino. But now that we're seeing passed by repeal and legislation, we will see over the next 3, 4, 5 years the emergence of a true online space independent of the bricks and mortar function.
Sure.
And if and as that makes its way across the country and here into Nevada, that will be where we see even bigger implications as it relates to the in-play piece. But the one last piece that I would add as we look at sort of the U.S. market as a whole and the evolution state by state is we're seeing some great technology come in, as Matt alluded to. But I think that it's really important that we as an industry show a lot of respect to the expertise of the leaders, like the three guys to my left, who have spent the last 20, 30, 40 years bookmaking in the U.S. and understanding the culture of the U.S. better. And you can bring in all the artificial intelligence and automation you want, and it's going to play a big part, but that's got to be managed and massaged with the know-how of guys that we're seeing over here.
Well, after the singularity, everything changes, Benji Cherniak. It's coming. It's coming. 2019 or 2029, according to Ray Kurzweil. Not me. All right, so I guess we can now move on to the Q&A segment. Does anyone have any questions? I'm sure. Okay, let's just go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah. All right, so he's asking basically, how do you manage when you offer, the line? I mean, there's already some places that just have continuous betting that never take the lines down. That's dangerous, but there's places that are doing it.
So there's a few answers to the question, and I think it'll be interesting to hear the guys on my left and their perspective on it. First of all, I think that, just to clarify, I think it was a misinterpretation that it's not 50% of the handle being live betting currently in Nevada is 50% mobile. And then within that, there's a percentage of which is live betting, which varies from book to book. I think William Hill would have the largest percentage of live betting, but I could be mistaken. But to your next point, in terms of when do you take the lines up and the lines down, it's an evolution. So initially, when live betting emerged, and as it's emerging, it's kind of during the timeouts and TV timeouts during play. But in terms of some of the technology and the lines that we're creating at Don Best that we're beginning to sell to books both in Nevada and globally, it's, as Peter alluded to, it's a continuous superfluous throughout the game. The goal is to minimize suspensions because that's what makes for a better user experience. And as some of you guys know, there's nothing more frustrating than you're sitting on your app and trying to get a bet down and you can't get it down. It's suspend, suspend, suspend. So there's a fine line in the art of bookmaking when it comes to the in-play wagering component between trying to mitigate risk for the book, while at the same time trying to make it a great user experience. And the two don't go together, meaning the more you're protecting the risk, the worse the experience is for the user. So the key is to minimize suspensions, but suspend when you have to, because sometimes you do. But it's also potentially what you'll see is some of the bookmakers, as they gain more and more experience in the in-play space, saying, you know what, it's okay to take a slightly lower hold percentage, take a few hits, by making it a better customer experience, because our handle will go up and up because they'd rather play with us than the guy down the street where you can't get a bet down.
Yeah. Go ahead.
We suspend it we take the bets mostly during the timeouts and that sort of thing. The one thing I would mention about football, though, I was part of the transition team from Wnba when William Hill bought them. So I'd worked a little bit with those guys. We in America, we kind of take a lot of things for granted that are really kind of weird. In football, I would say is like the top of the list. You score a touchdown at 7 points, you get a field goal at 3 points. Well, who made this stuff up? But it's all kind of with it. But the thing is, like in a basketball game, somebody steals the ball and runs down the court. It's going to be 2 or 3 points, and the totals might be 200. So it's not that significant. Whereas in football, you might be on the goal line and ready to score, and if you fumble or throw an interception, it's 7 back the other way. So I know they had a lot of trouble, and they really want to have everything, quantified mathematically. It was really difficult for them to kind of get a grasp of American football, and I know they have a team of guys doing all their in-games back there. So who the football guy is, I don't know. Whether they have a bunch of them, I don't know. Because once the sale went through, I left the company. But it's interesting to get that perspective sometimes, because, like I said, we take it all for granted. 7s, 3s, that sort of thing, and they look at it like, well, where'd you guys come up with this stuff? So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a really good question, because when I think about, books, and correct me if I'm wrong, but books aren't so much afraid of any individual sharp guy. They're afraid of people like Right Angle Sports, for instance, a sharp guy where you've got 100 people all following him, And Right Angle Sports is actually a perfect example because, of course, Edward's a great guy, gives great picks. The problem is you only have 3 seconds to get your bet down, right? So books, it's a cat and mouse game. But when it comes to live betting, if there was someone like Right Angle Sports who had, hundreds of subscribers and he was that sharp and people were following his action in live betting, that is where books could seriously get hurt. Any one individual guy is not going to hurt you that much, as you know. It's when there's a bunch of people following one of those guys and they're all coming in at the same time.
That's why you got your limits and move the number, and, certain guys, that you respect greatly, and move it a little bit more on that guy, or maybe not move it at all on another guy.
But what if it happens during live betting? How are you going to move your number and you're getting hit with 100 maximum sharp bets within 3 seconds in a live betting situation?
Well, again, that's what you do with your limit and your computer system and all that sort of thing. So it's not like that's something that's brand new to us. We've been dealing with that for 39 years.
But not with live betting, though.
Not with live betting, but there are numbers. Back when Billy Walters first started with the computer guys, it would move everywhere, and we didn't have Don Best to look at and see who had what, we just had to move quickly, and you knew what guys were doing what, and you tried to adjust accordingly.
I mean, what do you think about that, Matt Holt? I mean, potentially. Sorry, I just want to get your thought on that. Potentially, if there was a, I mean, there aren't any, prominent, as at least to my knowledge, touts for live betting. But if that does come to pass, which I'm sure it will, that could be very dangerous for books because again, they can't manage 500 people following a guy who actually has an edge.
Agreed, and live betting certainly is the biggest vulnerability in terms of hold percentage to the casinos right now. But you see that most of the bigger operators in Nevada don't do their own in-play wagering anymore. They either use Sport Radar or they're affiliated with Stadium Tech, who has a deal with Sport Radar, or Benji's team at Don Best, and you're getting one of those deals where someone else is managing it for you, and you're basically flipping the switch and turning it on and trusting that whether it's Sport Radar, Don Best, Genius Sports, whoever it is providing your in-play, that they're doing the best job possible.
Right.
And one of the biggest problems right now with in-play within the United States is the customer service experience. To Benji's point, try getting a bet on. Log into any of these apps in Nevada right now during a baseball game, which is perfectly made, by the way, for in-play betting because you have that 30 seconds between pitches and the lines move pennies. And because they move pennies constantly, your bet's denied, your bet's denied, your bet's denied. And you try 10 times and you go, you know what, this stinks, forget it.
Right. Yes.
That customer service experience, that offers the most opportunity for growth, I think, in the U.S. in-play market. Is the customer experience right now is bad. You can't get a bet in, and that needs to change. But some of the reason it's bad is because people are so conscious out there of making sure the lines are so sharp because it's so new.
Yeah, great question. All right, another question. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, me? Okay. Oh, great. Are you guys? How do you feel about this hit rule with the NFL? Is that going to influence your totals?
Got to, right? What do you think, Tony Miller?
You know what? We're looking into that, and we're all talking about it right now. I don't think it's going to affect us as far as our totals, our lines on the game. It's going to slow down the game a lot. It's going to affect the in game a lot because there's going to be a lot more penalties. Guys will be running to the cameras on the sidelines, looking at reviews. Slow the whole game down a lot. Now I've heard that it's not. I watching the game the other night, and I see one of the head referees talking, saying, there's been less penalties this preseason than any other preseason in the past, and a lot of guys are making a lot of hay out of the helmet rule. We'll see come regular season, but we're ready for it. But it's not going to affect any totals, I don't believe, and it's not going to affect anything as far as in-game play.
What do you think, Chris Andrews? Go ahead.
See that it does. Will you make those adjustments?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But I honestly can't see it happening. I really don't.
So what are you going to do, Chris? Just wait to see how it plays out, and then.
Well, I think it's going to be a wait and see, but I think it might have some effect. But to Tony's point, there was, 3 weeks ago they called a whole bunch of them. Last week, not so many. Last couple of days, again, I think there was like 8 of them, something like that. So it is dwindling, and I think it's probably the referees are trying to make a point. The league's trying to make a point, and I don't think it'll be real significant during the course of the season. But of course, if we start seeing defenses playing less aggressively and totals going up, we'll try to adjust as quick as we can.
Okay. Go ahead.
Can they integrate play-by-play for all the various sports apps like ESPN, Yahoo? Can they? Is that part of the in-play betting and the lines constantly moving totals, money lines? Is that any way affected by the play-by-play feed as it's coming in? And if so, do you rely on certain play-by-play apps like from companies?
So I could probably take you want to take it, Matt?
No, go ahead.
I could probably take the first stab at that one. So as a general statement for the companies that are creating the fluid in-play betting lines that moves with every basket and every pitch and not just during the timeouts, what's really relevant is having the best possible data sources, and that would typically be the league-sanctioned data sources. So even prior to the repeal of PASPA in May of this year, whether they like to admit it or not, the majority of the professional sports leagues in the U.S. were already in the betting business. And the reason I say that is you have the NBA, who sells their line to Sport Radar and gives them distribution rights to sell that information to betting companies for in-play wagering purposes. And it's a smart thing all the way around because A, there's revenue there that can be shared amongst the stakeholders, but B, you now have the bookmaker able to use the best possible data for setting those lines because it comes directly from the NBA in real time and it's the fastest possible data. And we have the same thing for the NHL, MLB, and it's just a matter of time before we have it for the NFL too. For the college conferences, it's a clusterfuck right now because there is no centralized distribution sources on a conference-by-conference basis. They're still figuring out the betting space. So to trade college basketball and college football right now, either you gotta illegally send people into stadiums with mobile apps to send back the information for in-play wagering purposes, or you got to trade it with whatever sources are available that are generally quite substandard, which is what we're trying to do with very mixed results. And the key is to limit the number of markets and tell your customers who are betting companies to minimize the action that they would take on college sports for that reason.
Okay, good answer. Another question?
Yeah, I live in Nevada, and I use William Hill a lot, so in-play is like my main thing that I do. I always bet, whatever my pre-tip bet is always less than my in-play. I always bet way more in-play than I actually bet on the game that I wagered and I bet. And I'm wondering, when are we going to start getting the same lines that the overseas get? Like, I cap a game at night, but like Wnba, for example, I can't bet it till 7 o'clock in the morning over here in Nevada. We don't get Japanese baseball. We don't get international basketball. When are we going to be able to get those things that we could make money too, like the offshore bets make?
Go ahead.
Well, I would say that all these things, it's supply and demand. And, take like Tony Miller. I've known Tony 30-some years. He mentioned Art Manteris. Well, that's my cousin. I've known him since I was born. And all of us guys, as much, we're all friends. I think we have a great fraternity, but we're also competitive. And, Tony's trying to outdo me. I'm trying to outdo him. I'm trying to outdo my cousin. So we sit down at Thanksgiving. I got bragging rights, So we're all very competitive. But if there's a market for it, we'll eventually have it. I don't see it, in all honesty, in what you're saying right now. But that changes. Like I said, if you asked me 39 years ago, would every game have money lines on it? And, one thing we do at Southpoint, probably most of us do it now, I have money lines on everything. Games 40 points, man, we got a money line.
Sure. Matt?
So, so it's supply and demand. If the demand increases for some of these markets, we will have them.
Matt, you got a thought on that?
And to his point, I think he hit it pretty well, but it's not just demand. People always ask us about limits. I'm sure Chris gets hits about limits, Tony about limits all the time. Limits are based on liquidity. The limits in NFL are higher not because NFL is the most popular sport, but because there's already more liquidity. You can get more bets back if you move the number. And to your point, if we put up Japanese baseball and you beat us, but no one else makes any bets, you're strictly gambling to one player who's really good at it. Once upon a time in Nevada, NASCAR betting went through a really popular stage. Everyone was, hey, let's bet NASCAR. And then all of a sudden, the general public stopped betting NASCAR, and it was only sharps, and the books were getting killed. Go try to get down more than $500 on NASCAR now. You can't do it. Same thing with WNBA. WNBA had a little boom where people were betting WNBA, then the general public stopped betting WNBA. Books aren't going to put up sports where only one guy and, oh, by the way, that guy's an expert who's going to beat you is going to bet it. As soon as there's any public demand for a sport, these guys hang it up. They don't do a lot of soccer. They'll tell you, we don't do a ton of soccer in Nevada, but everyone has every matchup during World Cup or the Euros. As long as there's public demand, you'll always see the wagering available.
Tony, you want to chime in?
And times are changing. As to your question, it doesn't help you here in Nevada right now, but the Golden Nugget in Biloxi, the Golden Nugget in Atlantic City, had a European engine come in by a group called SB Tech. I'm not running their numbers from here in Nevada. They got a company that came in out of Bulgaria, and they're booking everything in the world. You can go to that counter right now in Atlantic City and bet on sumo wrestling in Japan. You can bet on Gaelic curling. So as far as NBA, and they're 24/7. Their book doesn't close. You can bet 24/7 on a Sportsbook in Golden Nugget right now through SB Tech, and they offer everything in the world. And one day it's going to happen here. Things are changing fast.
All right. I think we have time for one more question only. I'm sorry about that. Let's see who you're sure.
Hey guys. We have a couple questions from the chat.
Okay.
I'm going to hit you up with Nick Papa George's question. He says, how far do they see themselves integrating or intertwining with the professional leagues, considering MGM now has a deal with the NBA for data rights and advertising? How far will it go?
All right, that's a good question. How much do you think the leagues will just screw it? Let's just get in bed with these gambling companies and just not even pretend anymore.
Well, I'm a little resentful myself, you know, because like I said, I've been here a long time, and these guys fought us tooth and nail for, well, my 39 years here, and now all of a sudden it's legal. They want to get in bed with us, you know, so I'm a little resentful. Well, maybe more than a little resentful, actually. But, you know, I want to see, what's that mean, MGM and the NBA? What's it mean? They get to wear a patch on their shirt, or is it more than that? You know, I don't know. And right now, we don't know. And I think every one of us here has talked about the constant evolution of our business. Yeah. And sometimes we have to, rather than being proactive, we have to be reactive. And I think that's something, you know, at this point, at least for me, that's the way I look at it. You know, if they want to provide us something, then, you know, maybe we could do that. But if they, you know, like I said, I'm not happy that they fought us for all these years. You know, well, I'm 62 years old. You know, I'm kind of, you know, I'm on the downside of a very mediocre career. So, you know, I don't know how many years I have left. I wish we'd had PAPSA 39 years ago.
Same thing with marijuana. They've got stores where you can buy marijuana now. How mind-blowing is that? You know? Unbelievable. What do you think, Tony Miller? You have any thoughts on this?
You know, I'm with Chris on this. I think it's total bullshit. You know, these leagues all of a sudden now, they want to pop into Nevada. They want a piece of the action, where all these years they didn't want no action at all here. And now here they are knocking on our door. We got an NFL team coming. We got the NHL here. They're all going to be here. Now they all want a piece of the action. Why didn't you come in here years ago and look how we were running things and, you know, give us credit then? I mean, everyone's looking to Nevada now. Everyone's looking towards guys like Chris and I and all the other guys in town on what to do. And now they want a piece of the action. Fuck them.
There you go. So great question. All right. Great question. The answer to that question is it's bullshit. We have a little time for one more question. One more question. If you got one from the comment section, from the
Yes,
chat.
we have one more from Ron Walsek. He says, how many states do you think will be receptive to legalize gambling?
There you go. How many states? What do you think? 50? How many? What do you think? What do you think?
I don't know about 50. I think
No?
it's just a question of over what period of time is the missing element to that question. So you've got
Eventually, all 50?
maybe not all 50, but I think you get up to like 35 in the next 7 or 8 years.
Matt Holt, you have any insights into that? How many states?
I was
Over,
surprised.
under?
I
35 and a
think
half?
it's probably going. I agree with Benji. I think by the end of next year, you'll probably see about 20, and within 5 years, you'll probably be in the 30s. I don't know that you ever get to all 50 just because legislations move so slow, and in some states, they may not have viable even operations to distribute sports betting at this point. I mean, how are they going to even distribute it in a state like Alaska? But I think you'll get to in the high 30s fairly
You don't
quickly.
think at some point they'll see, all right, so it's 35 states have it legalized now, then the other 15 will be like, let's just do it. I mean, it's obvious.
Not everybody has a state lottery, and there's a lot of things that you'd say, look, are simple. State lotteries make so much money for states, and so much of that money goes to schools, and that's how they build schools and stuff in states, and every state doesn't have lottery. So I think every state's a little naive, but I certainly think it's high 30s, low 40s.
Tony Miller, any thoughts on that? Over under 37 and a half?
I'm gonna make the over $1.50. You know, get a piece of Buffalo Wild Wings because they're in all 50 states, and if they get books in all their places, you're rich.
And what do you think, Chris Andrews?
I think there's some states, you know, I've made this argument before. There's like this puritanical thread that runs through the American political system, and I think you get to some of these Bible Belt states, or even, you know, some of the northern states, and I think they'll probably just continue to see the evil of it in the very near future. Now, you know, 50 years from now, I don't know, but I think about somewhere between 35 and 40. You know, going to be somewhere in there.
All right. What a great panel. Benji Cherniak, Chris Andrews, Tony Miller, Matt Holt. Thanks so much. Give them all a round of applause. Thanks, everyone.
folks, welcome into the International Football Betting Conference 2018, the final episode of the weekend. Yes, we made it. I don't think we lost too many people along the way. This is going to be an informational panel here. We're going to go back and forth on a lot of topics, certainly have some fun. It's the NFL. It's the easiest thing to talk about. When you go to Thanksgiving, when you go out on holidays with your friend, everybody knows who the starting quarterback of the New England Patriots is. Maybe they don't know the Wyoming quarterback, or maybe they don't know the Hawaii quarterback, but everybody's an expert in the NFL. That's what makes this the most fun. Just to get a little bit of stuff out of the way here, I'm Donnie Rightside. Apparently, though, on Twitter, all of a sudden, I'm Donald Rightside now, so I actually officially made it in the market here. We're moving up a little bit there.
You're presidential.
Yeah, exactly. So trying to make our headway, but getting a little bit of business out of the way. Sportsbookreview.com. If you haven't checked out the website yet, obviously most of you people here, but watching live on the network out there, it's a great place to go. SBRodds.com certainly has ramped it up in the past year. Also have a very good social media campaign now headed by Seth. He's pushing it to the max. Great people behind the scenes, but also if you haven't given us a follow yet on Twitter, at SBR Sports Picks, check it out. A lot of tweets coming through daily, and also, of course, sportsbookreview.com online. The one thing interested, if everybody in here is obviously watching, but if you're at home right now and watching through YouTube, there's a little subscribe button there just below where we're talking right now. Just 1 year ago today, the interesting part about that was only 22,000 people were following us, up over 45,000 today. So keep the brand expanding. This is what we're here for, you know. It's a lot of fun. They treat us very well here, and we want to keep everything moving along and certainly have some fun. But we don't want to waste any more time here. Only have a short amount because I know Gabe's going to talk about the Bills for 45 minutes. I'm going to go with the Eagles. We might not make it through, but let's go over the panel of what we have. Just to my left right here, Drew at Whale Capper. It's actually at Whale_Capper on Twitter. Obviously, he has appeared on Sportsbook Review, but one of the best things that he does is he does have a podcast called the Deep Dive Podcast. A lot of us have long flights home. A lot of us have long drives home. Pop it in. You're going to get a knowledge out of Drew. Drew, say hello to the people out there.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. I'm honored and humbled to be part of the grand finale of this amazing event, and cannot wait to talk some football with you guys.
Fantastic. There he is. And also, sitting right next to us, Kelly. If we get some information there from Kelly, at Kelly in Vegas on Twitter. Kelly Stewart, also a big part of Wager Talk, and also the founder of KellyInVegas.com, and also, as you know, is her proxy service. You can hit it live, proxy.kellyinvegas.com. Kelly, say hello to everybody.
Hi, guys. Just want to say thanks for having me. Pretty excited. I am mad at Zach for making me be the last panel of the day and spending all weekend entertaining everybody.
And I think we could say last but not least, the guy on the left, if you haven't seen him on a show, or more importantly, if you haven't been on his show, there's a good chance that later today there will be a laptop floating around the casino floor. Gabe will have you on live. You can certainly check him out every day on the Fantasy Sports Network and also at late night action. Usually goes 2 hours, sometimes 4 hours on anger management. Gabriel Morency, follow him on Twitter at Sports Rage. I think wraps it up well. Say hello to people, Gabe.
Pleasure to be here, Donnie. Great to see you. First things, I want to apologize. My voice a little shot. I know normally I sound like Pavarotti and Adele. So we're a little rougher than usual, but we're ready to rock. Let's do this.
Gabe, I love it because you make me actually have a feminine voice for the first time in my life.
No, we'll have some time. We are going to condense a lot of stuff. We're going to hit each and every NFL team as fast as we can, try to get some information. More importantly, at the end of it, we'll take some questions. Maybe you can pick the brains. It's all about information in this business. If you can pick up one thing that helps you make money, I think it's going to be a worthwhile occasion. First, we're going to have some icebreakers here, some topics that we're going to talk about of how we approach the NFL season and what we like to get after and look at. The first one, the rule changes that are coming in. A lot of the people talking about the helmet rule that's coming into football. You see it each and every week. There was a game 2 weeks ago, right in the middle of a Saturday afternoon, the Minnesota Vikings and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Two of the most egregious penalties I've probably seen in the last 5 to 10 years in the NFL. Thank goodness it was only called in the preseason. If you watch the running back running out of flat, he's got a 10-yard sprint on the DB, lowers his head, lowers the boom, runs over the defender, and the defender got a 15-yard penalty. Second one in that one, which we all saw, which was retweeted around multiple times, was the sack penalty where you come off the edge, you make a simple tackle on the quarterback, and now it affects the game. We're going to go by just a few minutes, person to person, to see how that might affect your capping, especially earlier in the season. Also the kickoff rule. I mean, Devin Hester might be able to come out of retirement right now, more of a punt return type on the kickoffs. No wedges out there anymore. You can't get a running start. So theoretically, sometimes the NFL doesn't think it ahead. They want less contact, but I think this is going to return much, much more in the way of kick returns and maybe help out some scoring. Also the catch fumble rule. Last year when you saw Jesse James, was it a catch, was it not a catch? A huge play in that Pittsburgh game. Flip it over to the Super Bowl where they almost reversed it with the Zach Ertz catch late in the game where was he a runner, wasn't he a runner? That's more likely what you're going to get this year. So I'd like to open up to the panel. What are we looking forward to and how we're betting? And I'll start with you, Drew.
Okay, well, the rule changes, I mean, aside from what they're trying to do, making the sport safer, keeping the sport intact, really. I mean, they're trying to, the participation across youth leagues, especially out where we live in California, is a little spooky. But, so what they're trying to do, well, I think it probably will have some good long-term effects on, maintaining a sport that we love to watch. I'll take a contrarian angle on this particular penalty impacting totals. I've seen lots of takes of, okay, well, this is going to extend drives, it's going to increase scoring opportunities, things like that. I think a lot of that's overstated. That doesn't mean we're not going to see a rash of overs. There's a lot better quarterback play coming into this league this year than we had last year. Last year we saw starts from guys like Scott Tolzien and Brian Hoyer started week 1. You had numerous games with C.J. Beathard out on the field. So, you're going to have a lot better quarterback play across the league, I think, this year. That may impact overs more than this particular rule. And I'm sure you've all heard this as well. They've been overemphasizing in preseason. Like, they are specifically trying to send a message to these players about the seriousness that they're taking this kind of new approach, and whether it really ends up being impactful or meaningful in any games. Maybe one a week. I don't think it's going to be every game for sure.
Yeah, Kelly, we talked about the 3 things going over. Is there any other type of rule changes that you're looking forward to maybe having an impact on capping this year?
So I'm going to agree with Drew on everything he said. I think first and foremost, everything is quite the overreaction. We see it all the time on Twitter.
Always.
I mean, just like the Hawaii game last night, classic overreaction there. We're going to see that with these penalties being called. I think something more important to maybe look at instead of overreacting is how we see it on a week-to-week basis. Maybe keep a better idea of which referees are calling more of these penalties as opposed to the entire league as a whole. Kind of like umpires in baseball where we see over and under umpires based on their strike zones. We're going to see some of these referees call it, and also maybe depending on how much they like the players. If you have an Aqib Talib that maybe the refs aren't a big fan of, he may get more penalties. But one thing that I've talked to some of my guys about that we're looking towards the illegal contact stuff, some of the penalties we've seen over the years change in the NFL that do affect things. I think we just take a step back, relax, everybody don't overanalyze what we're seeing here, and realize that it is going to affect the game, and it's going to affect the game longer term over the course of a season. And so the books are going to adjust to that too. So is there going to be some overs right away out of the first week of the season? Yes, probably. I'm not rushing to betting them though.
I find this whole thing interesting, and I agree with you guys in the sense that everybody's talking about it. Oh, drives going to extend, it's going to affect totals. No, it's not. These guys are going to adjust probably by the second half of week 1. Now, one thing I've noticed in the preseason, it's the veteran players who are getting tagged with these penalties. Why? Because they've been around a while. They're used to tackling this way. The fact of the matter is, as Will Capper brought up, you look at high school football participation. Football's a dangerous sport right now. People don't want to play football. There's a negative connotation around it. And you see Richard Sherman, who's supposed to be a smart guy, complaining about these rules. These are the same guys that are bitching about this new rule will be the same idiots that are going to be suing the NFL in 10 years saying, you didn't take care of me and trying to protect us. They're trying to protect you. Listen, Donnie played football. People don't know how to tackle anymore. That's the problem. A helmet is not a tackling tool. You're not, watch Deacon Jones. He wasn't leading with his head. He'd clothesline you. Pittsburgh Steelers, steel curtain. They just threw your ass to the ground. They manned up. Everybody sort of, pussies out, for lack of a better term. I apologize. Sort of NFL tackling. Now watch a DB. It's like NBA defense. Let me put my hand out. They don't tackle. They push out of bounds. So ultimately, I don't think it's going to have a big impact at all. Teams are going to figure it out, and coaches are going to get angry right away and say, stupid jackass, stop doing that. I like Bill Belichick, who's the best coach. I hate the Patriots, but Bill, he's a diabolical genius. And he said, everyone's talking about this rule. He goes, it's not very complicated. Don't lead with your head. Next.
That was fantastically entertaining beyond being informative. Kelly brought up a really interesting point about referee tendencies, and if you're someone who incorporates that sort of thing, you have your work cut out for you this year, because there was an enormous turnover in a lot of the refs that have been around for a really long time.
It's a great point. There are a lot of new refs. Unfortunately, it's all their sons. They're like a mob cartel.
Yeah.
I was so happy. Hockley retires. No, his son steps in.
There's huge turnovers. Guys like Stewart, guys that you could count on to make terrible calls are finally retired, I guess, and this could be good or bad. But if you're someone who incorporates that sort of stuff, then you're going to have a lot of database building early in the season because there's lots of new faces.
Another interesting part also, it's not so much helmet to helmet. They're talking about just lowering the head. If anybody, I mean, I'm sure some people in here had a bet last night on the Jacksonville Jaguars game. If you watch the Marquise Lee play, a defender comes up and hits the guy at the knees but led with his head, forces a fumble, which last year would have went for a touchdown or you had a big turnover. Now gets a 15-yard penalty on the defense and it goes the other way. So a lot of the referees are just learning the same way the NFL
You're
was.
right. The refs don't know.
That's
And
what I mean.
there's been audio in which the ref said, guys, we're trying to figure this out as well. But I just want to bring up, when I said it's veteran teams, like, you know, the Ravens, by the way, 12 wins in a row in the preseason. Hey. But anyways, you watch a Ravens game, Terrell Suggs is nailing people like bang. And he's like, what'd I do? Like, bro. In college, though, they're actually, you get ejected from the game. And they're a little bit reckless with it. When guys get kicked out, you're like, man, the kid didn't mean to do it. But you kick a guy out of the game, he learns not to do that. So that's what I'm saying. You look, it'll be the veteran sort of teams that have been around a while that'll get tagged with this, but I really don't think it has an impact.
I think another thing that we're not going to see that we're supposed to see is that the offensive players are also supposed to be not making that same mistake with lowering the helmet. But we haven't seen, at least I haven't seen one of those calls yet this season.
Yeah, no, that's going to be interesting. We'll keep it going here. Betting totals here for the season. I mean, obviously we're cappers. We want to give some information out and also pick the brain.
Let's
of what
get to
we
some
actually
picks,
look
Donnie.
for.
Let's get to some
That's
picks.
picks, yes. What do you look for in team totals when betting? You know, you're going to watch some preseason football out there. A team is stagnant. You know, my Philadelphia Eagles got shut out 5-0 by Cleveland. Am I worried? Not so much, because you have to take a look at the bigger picture out there. Starting quarterback's not in there. Top 3 running backs aren't in there. Wide receivers in there. Do you want to score against the Cleveland Browns? Sure you do. But what do we take out of when we look at a team total? Maybe a coaching change, maybe injuries heading into the season, or even do you pay attention to preseason and say, you know what? I throw preseason out, and I'm going to go with some of my numbers that I have. Go ahead, Drew.
Okay, so team totals are going to be interesting this year. I'm going to say something very cliche. This is a copycat league. I know none of you have ever heard that before. Philadelphia Eagles put on a clinic of using advanced thinking to set themselves up to score. I don't know what they scored. 7. I think it was like 49 or 87. Some ridiculous amount of points they scored on drives where they kind of made decisions in drive in the middle of the field where it was most important to kind of stagger their play calling to get 4th down conversions, and it was brilliant. You saw it play out in the playoffs to the tune of they won the Super Bowl. And I think that you have to look out this year for teams that adopt that sort of aggressive mentality and who are using those same sort of strategies, teams that aren't running on 1st and 10, teams that are running on 3rd and 2 to set up a 4th and 1 if they don't convert on 3rd and 2. Things, people who are using the correct decision making in game are going to they're going to score more points. They're just, they're going to be more accountable for team total overs. And then, of course, always, a lot of people who handicap totals don't necessarily account for pace of play. And if you're not doing that, incorporate that in some way, and I think you'll see better results this season.
Fantastic. Kelly, how about that? Some stuff with like preseason and stuff. Do you take any of that in, or what's your approach to that?
So I try not to even watch any preseason games, honestly. That, all jokes aside, I think we just see a lot of different things in preseason from different teams. You see the Belichicks of the world that want to show nothing. And then you have the guys where they have to play 3 quarterbacks in a game because you don't know who your starter is going to be. So those are the kind of more interesting games. Like I was really surprised to see RG3 out there the other night actually do well. So you have different things you're looking at in those preseason games, but I think at the end of the day, a vast majority of them don't matter. So I try not to take them into account too much. But as far as totals go and what we're going to see for the rest of the season, I think it holds like maybe a 5% weight. Yes, of course, barring any catastrophic injuries like we saw with Jordy Nelson a couple of years ago, bad things happening to your actual starting players. Overall, I don't think it really matters.
Gotcha.
Donnie, when I'm looking at regular season to win totals, and I had a great time doing the show last year with Donnie breaking down the games from 12-1 on SBR. But what did you and I always love, man? Going against the so-called consensus. It's like the super contest. A bunch of idiots and I are waiting. Oh, what's the consensus picks of the week? Fade the consensus picks of the week, all right? So listen, I'm 48 years old, and this is the stupidest era of society that I've ever been in. People are eating Tide Pods. You look at politically, you look at where we're at right now. You can't get any dumber than the society that we live in right now. So therefore, I want to fade the dumb people in the public. If somebody likes something, I'm going to just say, you know what, this guy's wrong, because society is wrong on a minute-by-minute basis. And perception and reality are 2 different things. What I like to do, it's basically, let's call it the fade ESPN angle. It's awesome. Basically, watch Herbie and Corso and whoever they like fade it. It's generally whoever they big up as the it factor. And the fact is, people are stupid. So there's only a few media outlets that have a lot of power and a lot of control. I want to get to this about Cam Newton after, actually. What say? Is Cam Newton, who's a better quarterback, Cam Newton or Drew Brees?
Yeah, exactly. Drew Brees, yeah.
All right, is he? Who's got a better record against the point spread in their career? Cam Newton. So who's a better quarterback? I don't know. If I'm a betting man, Cam Newton's a better quarterback. There's perception and reality. And I like to work against society's perceptions. People don't like Cam Newton. People don't like Floyd Mayweather. So they think Ricky Hatton, who's doing lines and hookers in his room before the fight, is going to beat him. And I'll bet against that every damn day.
Gabe's great, by the way.
Look, he's on. We're only getting started right now, so just wait, because segueing into
Thank you very much.
Segueing in is the AFC East, which, look, we are on a time limit here. The first thing that pops up is those Buffalo Bills. But just to give a quick synopsis there, we all know the Patriots. You know, Super Bowl hangover for them. They're in it every year. They know how to deal with it. You're looking at two teams in this division now that possibly will be starting and going ahead with rookie quarterbacks. The Buffalo Bills and the New York Jets. And then there's the Miami Dolphins as the outliers in there. We're going to go around the panel. Again, we don't have a time to spend a ton of it. But, Gabe, I'm going to start with you first. Buffalo Bills, and again, what everyone wants to know. Nathan Peterman, who's starting, McCarron gets injured. Do you just go with the young guy, and what's the prognosis?
It's a tough situation, and everyone, Morency going to talk about the Bills, and of course, yes, I am a diehard Buffalo Bill fan. And I'll say this right now. I mean, this was a 9-win football team last year, and Tyrod Taylor is no longer there, of course. No longer. Tyrod. Changed his name, now he's in Cleveland. So, Tyrod Taylor, now no longer. So, is he really a 4-game drop-off? Is there a difference? I think a lot of people think that last year somehow Buffalo was a fluke. I'll tell you what, man, McDermott can coach. There was a couple of times where he had a deer in the headlight situation in-game management, but he was a rookie. You look at his attitude, you look at the draft picks, you look at the size, you look at the talent, you look at that defense. I'm going to say the Buffalo Bills probably have a top 7 defense in the National Football League. Problem is their schedule is, it's O.J. Simpson. It's a killer. So you look at how they have to open up. It's a little bit of a problem, but I think people could be underselling. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't have a strong opinion. I can't say, hey, let's go over here, but I think, I wouldn't be running the window to bet under 6.5 on the Bills right now. I think people are underestimating them a little bit.
I'm not running to the window to bet under 6 wins either, but I'm not so sold. You guys lost Richie Incognito. I can't even talk. Incognito.
Listen, Richie Incognito should be in like Clark County locked up right now.
Probably.
We don't need him.
And Eric Wood.
Is
So
he
no,
not?
Tyrod Taylor's not a 4-point drop-off, but 2 of your O-linemen. Then you have LaShawn McCoy and whatever his off-field dealings were on Instagram with his girlfriend. I'm not so sure
And
about.
nobody, listen, I know, I'm on a fan sports, so you're right. LaShawn McCoy had the most rushes for loss from the art of scrimmage last year. There are holes on his football team, and I'm not bigging them up. I'm just stating, I think the Buffalo Bills, if everything falls into place, they can win 7 games. I'm just, I think the number is accurate with them.
We'll leave it at that.
I'll be honest. You make a great point. Their defense is great. They even upgraded parts of their defense. Sean McDermott is a hell of a coach.
Jalen Ramsey
Agreed.
runs his mouth. Trey White's every bit as good as he is.
I look at their schedule. I don't see a win before November. To be honest with you, it is.
I'll tell you right now, they're going to beat the Chargers in week 2. They're not losing their home opener.
Okay,
settle down, Will Campbell.
there's reason to be long-term optimistic that maybe Josh Allen develops into some type of premier quarterback in the NFL. I'm skeptical of that, but I'm not going to
I just said they don't suck.
I'm not going to say it's impossible that Josh Allen, makes it beyond 3 years in this league. But he's not a particularly accurate quarterback. The receiving core that he's throwing to cannot get separation.
Josh
from
Allen looks like when I play.
He is going to have a very tough time
How
completing
many times
passes
can I
when
hit
he's
the
playing
button and
against
just
first
hope
team
I can get it
defense.
in the end zone?
See, this is what I talk about, the perception. Josh Allen's not accurate. No, he wasn't at Wyoming. He's been throwing dimes right now.
The windows he's throwing into though are bigger because he's playing against the lower tier guys on defense. When the first team defenders are out there and the space is tighter, it's going to be much tougher. I think you're going to see if he completes 50% of his passes on Sundays early in the season. I think you're going to be like, wow, that was a good performance from him, because I think there's going to be a lot of times out there where he just cannot find space, and that was why Tyrod Taylor was.
The window's
that
right
was why he
outside
was
the
able.
hall, Drew.
I know. Oh no.
Yeah, the
no.
window's
Oh no.
right there.
Oh no. Don't get me wrong. I have a relatively significant position on an alternative under on the Bills because I think they're
Look, I
legitimately
said,
like a
you
3-13
asked me,
kind of team.
I'm not betting. I'm not betting the Bills team total, but they will
Okay.
beat the Chargers in week 2.
Okay, so there's reason to be long-term optimistic, sure, fine, but it's the way that the schedule is stacked up, and seeing Josh Allen try to complete passes, it's going to be comedy early in the season.
Now, if we take a look at the division, though, because there are 2 teams that we're talking about the Bills. Now, I'm always under the philosophy, same thing we're going to get into with Cleveland Browns. Let the rookie go. You drafted him high. It's not 1987 where they're not being coached in high school or college.
Well, it's funny
These are
because you
coming
hear
into
this,
the pros.
well, you don't want Josh Allen open up in Baltimore.
Yeah,
well, where
where's
do
a
you
good
want?
spot?
So I guess
Yeah.
he'll open up at Minnesota then,
Yeah,
or
exactly.
there is no good way.
Yeah.
It's like breaking up with someone. There's never a good time to do it.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
It just is what it is. If you drafted the guy, you drafted him because you think he can play in the National Football League.
Yep.
Listen, McDermott's a very patient guy, and we saw last year with McDermott, even when they were 5-3, he's thinking long term. I don't think he wanted to make the playoffs last year. He wanted to send a message. I'm looking at the big picture.
Completely.
And they said, well, you're going to make a wild card.
Yeah.
He said, I'm not here to win wild cards. I'm here to win a Super Bowl. He goes, I'm building a team that I need, that I want. So they might take a step back this year in the progress that they're going, but McDermott's a hard ass. This guy, I don't know if you guys know this, but Sean McDermott, I want to move on for the Bills, but Sean McDermott, he looks like Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was the high school wrestling champion prep of the United States of America. He's a little pit bull. He's a grinder. Mm-hmm. And you look, the first thing he did, he kicked they had freaking pinball machines and pool tables in their room before with Rex Ryan. And an S&M room in the back. So,
oh God.
Yeah, it's all business now. McDermott's a good coach, but let's move on because I got some winners, baby.
Let's take a look team totals in the conference here, which is what everybody wants to see what your thought process will be. And again, just getting back to Sam Darnold, are you going to take it that he's going to be the starting quarterback, or are you going to lose something?
He's the guy I'm talking about when I talk about the perception.
Yeah.
Because ESPN has selected him. Oh, Sam Darnold. Josh Allen has played better than Sam Darnold has in the preseason. It's just the fact that Sam Darnold's on the New York Jets, and ESPN needs a poster boy, and Baker Mayfield sucks too hard to be that poster boy. So Sam Darnold's the it guy right now. He's overrated.
These are hot takes. Okay. Rest of the AFC East, my personal feelings, the Patriots, they cannot construct a roster to go along with the absolutely unbelievable performance from 40-whatever-year-old Tom Brady. I don't think that they're legitimate contenders to win the AFC again. Last year, I thought they were underpriced to win the AFC at the start of the season, but this roster is if you power ranked this Patriots team against the last 15, this is probably the worst. And even though Tom Brady looks like he has a chip on his shoulder, he's probably going to try to, set the world on fire statistics-wise, just to kind of, remind people, hey, we lost the Super Bowl last year, but I'm still going to throw for 50 touchdowns. But, I think they win the East comfortably, but I don't consider them likely winners of the AFC.
Yeah, listen, this is the squarest thing you guys are ever going to hear me say. I think they're going to win 11 games. It's terrible. I don't want to admit that.
They do it every year, 11, 12.
They do it every year. I had to look this up this morning. Belichick, 185, 131, and 9 against the spread. It made me want to throw up. They have made their backers so much money.
As a Bills fan, I want to throw up, too.
And week in, week out, I still want to fade them because there's so much value on whoever they're playing. Guess what? You're going to get broke betting against the Patriots.
I just want to say quickly about the Patriots is there is going to be a decline, and it's going to come. But I know a lot of you watch The Simpsons. You remember the episode when Mr. Burns blocks the sun, and everyone's at the town hall, and they're all packing heat? He goes, you all talk a big game, but what are you going to do about it? Nothing. And that's what the Patriots are in right now. What are the Buffalo Bills going to do about it? They're going to slam fans through tables outside. The Dolphins suck. The Jets suck. It's the Patriots division. The question to me is, Deshaun Watson and the Houston Texans. I think this is I think the Chargers are overhyped, right now. But I think if Bill O'Brien could just get out of the way and let Deshaun be Deshaun, I think the Houston Texans have the best team on paper in the AFC. And I think that's the one team in the AFC that can knock the New England Patriots off this year.
I think we'll get to see it week 1, luckily for you, but I'm not so sure that's going to happen. I'm not disagreeing that they're undervalued. I'm just not thinking that they could probably beat the Patriots. That being said, the Patriots are in one of the easiest divisions. They're going to win the AFC East.
Yeah, they have the easiest schedule of
and
the
then
year 'cause they
thus
don't
they're
play
going to go over their team total. I mean, like I said, super square play, but how do you disagree with it?
Good angles early in the season, in my opinion, to fade the Patriots. I'm stepping in front of the train and going to get run over if they continue to cover against the spread at this unreal clip. They have their last two preseason games on the road. One game at home against the Texans, who are live dogs in that. You have a beautiful matchup with that Texans defensive line against an offensive line for the Patriots that's coming together. They have Skarnecchia. They'll be fine by December, but are they going to be intact and good on week one?
You're telling me, man. Give me the points.
And then you go back-to-back on the road against the Jags, another D-line that's ridiculous.
That's what
You
I
get
was
the
just getting ready to
Lions
say.
week
I'm
3.
really concerned with
I'm
the
almost certainly going to be fading the Patriots 3 weeks, and I look forward to trying to understand how they cover all three of those spreads after I lose.
Another top team that we're going to be taking a look at here, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that's the AFC North. They're one of the ones that are going to be the contenders, be there. But then again, Le'Veon Bell holding out. Big Ben's another year older. But then again, you draft a young rookie quarterback, and all of a sudden, Big Ben says, I want to stick around for 4 or 5 years. How much motivation will he have with that? The Baltimore Ravens, staunch on defense. And again, one of those motivating factors, Lamar Jackson comes into town. Now Joe Flacco, all of a sudden, is reborn as well. Cincinnati Bengals, and again, the team we're going to talk about as well, the Cleveland Browns, getting the hard knocks effect. You can walk right over to the Gold Nugget Sportsbook earlier in the summer. Some 7.5s and 8s offshore. That line is now 5.5 right now if you want to jump on the Pittsburgh Steelers, or, of course, if you want to take the points with the Cleveland Browns. Going over this division, the Steelers are the lead dog. Drew, we'll start out with you. What are we looking at from this division?
I think the Steelers are overpriced, and I don't think it's even close. They have an absolutely, without a question in my mind, bottom 5 defense in the NFL, and you're in now a much tougher division. People, I think, are reasonably optimistic about the Browns with as much talent as they have on that roster. I think the Bengals are a team everyone forgets about that have a very talented defense, especially on their defensive line. You're changing coordinators in Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin is not my favorite coach in the NFL. He's not my favorite 15 coaches in the NFL. And it's a locker room full of polarizing individuals. If they have any type of internal team chemistry issues at all this season, if things aren't going right, if they're 4-4 and they're looking up at a 6-2 Ravens or a 6-2 Bengals even, there could be a situation where the team kind of comes apart a little bit. They turn on Tomlin, and we could see a change of everything because there's just a lot of moving parts in Pittsburgh, and I don't understand why they're so overwhelming favorites for the North. I think they're ripe to be upset.
I agree. He took most of my notes on the Pittsburgh Steelers, so I'll just move on to the Baltimore Ravens, who I think have a really good shot at winning the division at plus 300.
I like it.
Joe Flacco, what happened to him? He wins a Super Bowl and you hear nothing of him again. And then insert Lamar Jackson and RG3. Now Joe Flacco's ready to play some ball. That being said, it's more that I'm down on the Pittsburgh Steelers than I'm necessarily high on the Ravens. I think 3-1's a pretty good shot here. And then they've covered 4 of their last 5 versus the Steelers, 9 of their last 10 against Atlanta. So I'm not too concerned with those 2 games. And then obviously they get to play Cincinnati and Cleveland a couple times each. Like I said, I think that they're a good value overall against the Ravens. I think that the Carolina game, Tennessee, the lovely Chargers, who I'm also not high on, we'll get to later, and then probably versus your Buffalo Bills, they might even lose, but still probably lock up the AFC North.
I look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I think it's a very similar situation to the New England Patriots. The decline, I think the window's closing. This is the last year with this unit right now. Le'Veon Bell wants out. The Steelers don't like paying people. Brown's on the wrong side of 30 right now. Reality's kicking in. Ben might want to hang around, but he's going to be escorting Trump from Stormy Daniels' hotel room again from a golf tournament in 2 years. The Baltimore Ravens are close. No one ever talks about that, just for the record. Why was Ben Roethlisberger in the hallway at that moment anyways? I'm just asking. But the Baltimore Ravens are close. They're real close, and I think they're going to take over. And you look at Mason Rudolph, who sucks, professional analysis right there, and you look at Lamar Jackson, who's going to be very good. Baltimore's going to take over this division again in the next year or 2. I don't know if it's this year. I think they're going to battle with them, but Pittsburgh are in the mix. Yeah. They'll make the playoffs, and then they'll lose. And Tomlin will do something stupid in the game. There's the synopsis with for the Steelers.
I want to bring something up with you here, which is important, because last year, if you haven't watched, me and Gabe did a show called The Closing Line and did 2 shows, one before the game, one at halftime. One of the best things that Gabe can offer is he does have a fantasy expertise which last week taught us a lot, last year taught us a lot. The one thing I want to talk about is Tucker, the field goal kicker for the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah.
I'm always under the impression that he actually hurts their offense because when they cross midfield, he's an automatic 3 points.
It's almost a crutch. They know.
Exactly. I don't want to push it. If it's one-on-one coverage, I'm not going to take, the deep shot where it might get intercepted. I know I can have a 55-yard field goal from in. Now, you taught us a lot last year on that show, talking about field goal overs, 46.5, 47.5. Talk about what you look for and why you zero in on that.
Well, that was great. And, it was good. It's good news, bad news, because I think I was the only degenerate gambler in the world that even knew that prop existed before. And now all you son of a bitches betted so much, you're moving numbers. We'll see. You look earlier in the year, the field goal props will be about 43.5, 44.5 long field goal. You look at a percentage, it's like everything else, guys. It's like golf, man. Guys are driving golf balls further now. It's like 3-point shots. Big men hit 3-point shots right now. And it's very simple. Look, my Buffalo Bills lost the Super Bowl because Norwood couldn't make a 47-yarder.
Yeah.
That's a chip shot nowadays. You're expected to make a 50-yard plus. So I know we're on the clock here, but I'll just tell you guys, as far as the long field goal prop, don't overthink it, okay? Everyone wants to sell you analysis and overthink it, break it down. We look at the long field goal prop, and out of the top 7 teams that kick 50-yard field goals or more, 5 of them played in domes.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, I don't know, I guess there's no wind or whatever, but it's just very, very simplified. The dome teams, long field goal props go over the number. Now, they adjust this. By the time we got to the Super Bowl, the long field goal prop was 47.5 yards.
Yep.
So the books have started to adjust this a little bit. But I'll tell you what, I'm not saying blindly bet any indoor game, but you got good kickers. Look, Vinatieri's is almost as old. He's like 3 years younger than I am. I think we got into an argument the other night on the air. Who looks younger? I say I do. But the dude hit a 58-yard field goal the other night.
Yeah.
It's just commonplace. Kickers don't miss these kicks. The long field goal prop is one of the best secrets in the business.
Gotcha. We'll move on to the AFC South. Jacksonville Jaguars, Tennessee Titans, Houston Texans, and the Indianapolis Colts. A lot to go over in this division here. How's Houston going to bounce back? Quarterbacks back in the fight.
Texans.
Also, big man on campus I do a show with all the time. Very high on the Texans, which again, rightfully so. You saw the way they operated when they had a healthy quarterback. But let's also take a look at the Andrew Luck effect. If you're looking at the 4 previous seasons before last year, double-digit win totals. Now you're looking like a 6.5. If you get healthy Andrew Luck, which we've seen in the preseason, you're talking about 6.5. They can't get to that number. Let's get some thoughts going on the paddle, but also, before we do, just add in another fantasy expert, Gabe. Tennessee Titans, what are we looking at maybe from the wide receiver core? What can be an advantage for fantasy-wise?
Yogi Berra once said, when you get to the crossroads of life, take it. I don't know what that really means, but we're at the crossroads right now for Marcus Mariota. I told people when Mariota and Winston were drafted, you got to go with Mariota. Winston's not going to be a successful quarterback in the National Football League. Mariota's a good guy, but he's got to get better. He's good. He's not great. He's got great talent and weapons around him. I think this is it. I mean, he either does or he's just going to be a mediocre quarterback for the rest of his career. But I tell you what, from a prop perspective, keep your eye on Corey Davis this year. I think Corey Davis might have been drafted a little bit too high last year. That's where we get into the perception. Oh, he was drafted 5th overall, so he must do this and that. Settle down. Let the kid, learn how to play football in the National Football League. And we saw in the playoff game last year, 2 touchdowns. Yeah. We see in the preseason right now. This kid's going to be a superstar. We were talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers and Antonio Brown. He's Antonio Brown 2.0, coming from the MAC, Central Michigan, Western Michigan. Corey Davis still flying under the radar right now. Your wide receiver props, you're probably going to get Corey Davis 2.5, 3.5 receptions a game. He will become the go-to target. He's going to be not a superstar, but a star breakout player this year. Bet on Corey Davis props.
Kelly, AFC South, any thoughts?
Well, I got to agree with you on the Houston Texans here. They have one of the softest schedules.
Yep. The softest in the league.
In the entire league. So they have to be able to go from 4-12 and do something better than they did last year. I can see 7 wins on their schedule, obviously, barring anything catastrophic happening to Watson, Watt, or Clowney. For the most part, I think they could split one with Tennessee. I'm not as low on Mariota as you are, but yeah, Buffalo, Indianapolis, Jets, Miami. I think this team can go over their season win total. I think they can win 9 games. I'm interested to see how well they play against the Patriots this first week. I have not bet the game yet. I'm a dog better. That is something I live for. I loved that the Chiefs went in to Foxborough last year.
I'd rather take points to give them.
Absolutely.
But Donnie, sorry, but you brought something up earlier about and you as well, Drew, about the analytics, and you talked about, you look at last year, the Philadelphia Eagles won because, listen, they had a great roster, the GM did a great job, but we're in Las Vegas right now. They won because Peterson didn't coach not to lose. Yeah. He coached to win. He was there, and he goes, no, we're going to go for it. We're going to run a verse. Right before the half against the Minnesota Vikings, people forget, it was 14-7. There's like 30 seconds left. A lot of coaches say, we're running the ball, and we're up 7. He went deep, scored a touchdown. That was part of Frank Reich as well. That's my concern with the Texans. Bill O'Brien, we look at Andy Reid and Bill O'Brien every damn year in the playoffs. They go to Foxborough and lose by 7. It's like they're coaching to lose by 7. You know what? You got to coach to win the game. And that's when I say Bill O'Brien's got to get the hell out of Deshaun Watson's way and just say, you know what? Let this kid do his thing, man, and let him win me a Super Bowl. Give me the Houston Texans to win this
Edwards
division.
Over here.
I thought Bill O'Brien showed huge growth as a coach last year. The way he adapted his game plan for Watson. The fact that he went with
Tom
Savage week 1 over Watson just shows you that he's not a great evaluator of talent on his own roster, which is a problem.
See, that's what I'm a little worried about here, Drew. Yes.
But once they got him in there and they saw what his skill set was, they adapted that offense on the fly. It was totally new look from what they were running. And he put up statistics that were mind-boggling and, in my opinion, a little unsustainable over the course of a season.
They're not
That's
putting
not
34
a hot take,
points
really.
a game up.
Yeah, he's not throwing 57 touchdowns. I'm sorry, But all that aside, if J.J. Watt plays 16 games, I will fall out of my chair. He looks like he is still dealing with whatever surgeries he had dealing with his back. I maybe expect 12 games out of him. There are other red flags on this Texans team. They are very, very thin at the offensive line. I could argue that they have the worst offensive line in the league. Definitely bottom 5. I think the expectations are
running backs are average.
Yeah, the running backs. The expectations, they have an amazing combination between Hopkins and Watson. That will be phenomenal to watch, and they will win games on that basis alone.
I think we'll see Will Fuller light it up this year as well, going deep. Watson and Fuller will have a nice connection.
Outside of the Texans, though, the rest of the AFC South is extremely it's really tough to handicap this one.
Jags are overrated, in my opinion, guys.
I'm the other way around. I think the Jags are underrated.
There you go.
I think, they have a world-class defense that they paired with Blake Bortles again for some weird reason. And Blake Bortles, his confidence is so fragile that they can't bring, a real backup onto the roster.
Teddy Bridgewater would be a great fit for this team.
The balance. But all that said, the defense is just wave after wave of unbelievably talented guys, especially in the secondary. It's very difficult to be particularly good at pass defense year over year, but when you get guys like Ramsey and Bouye lining up every week, you're going to be outstanding at stopping the pass, and that wins you games in this league. So I think the Jaguars still probably are the class of the AFC South. The Titans, which you brought up earlier, they have a huge, huge upgrade at offensive coordinator. They're bringing in Matt LaFleur. He was the quarterback coach with McVay last year at the Rams. He is going to have a much more amenable approach to Mariota's skill set than what Malarkey was doing last year. They were so bad in the red zone last year. So many opportunities there in the red zone. You got a quarterback that is as dynamic as Mariota, and they were running just god-awful play calls.
You know what, they were actually running an old-school Raider offense, almost like telling them, throw deep, do this.
Wild. It was wild.
You're right. A great call by you with the new coordinator. I love it.
So they were red flag candidates for regression. They didn't deserve to make the playoffs last year. Winning 9-7, getting into the playoffs on a tiebreak, and then even winning a playoff game was amazing overachievement for that team last year. But even that, all of the signs of regression, they still have a pretty talented offense. They have playmakers on defense, and if LaFleur finds a groove play calling in his first year on the job, then they're probably a threat to win the South.
They do have a rookie coach. That's the problem.
I was going to say with Vrabel, but I do think he's more offensive-minded. He's going to help Mariota. I mean, it is really hard to be positive about Mariota. The guy did throw more interceptions than touchdown passes last year. And
I like Mariota, though. I actually do. He's good, but he's got to get better for them to go to the next level.
I think they can get better. The good thing is they have a very favorable road schedule. They're not traveling far. The farthest west they have to go is Dallas. They do have to go to London, I guess, technically. But, I mean, overall, I think that this team can win 8 games. I think that they'll be in there with the Jags, with the Texans. This is a really tough division.
No, it's interesting because when you look at the Tennessee Titans last year, they go on the road and beat Kansas City. The coach was told, win this playoff game, you will have a job here. Won the playoff game, still got fired at the end of the year. Let's move it on to the AFC West. Chargers, Chiefs, Raiders, and Broncos. Kelly, this is your division. Your Broncos, what are we looking at?
me find my notes. Let me tell you about my Denver Broncos. We'll start with them because I don't need notes to tell you how bad it's going to be. No, that's a bad joke. I am a Broncos fan. I do have to say that I know it sounds really bad and really unprofessional, but I always get crap for it on Twitter, regardless if I say it or not. So I'm going to tell you, Case Keenum won me a lot of money last year in Minnesota, and I'm hoping that he's going to be competent. I actually had a conversation with Mr. Elway in October. I don't really recall a ton of it. It was a lot of fun. I had a lot of booze, and he was after a golf tournament, so I'm sure he doesn't remember much of it either. But
He
I
probably booed.
told
He
him
probably did too.
what a horrible perception he has of his quarterbacks. He sits there and I tell him all I have to say about Trevor Siemian, and he goes, "Don't worry, Paxton Lynch is the future." And if I had his cell phone number, I would text him and be like, "You have lost your mind."
Yeah.
So I'm hoping he does the right thing here with Case Keenum. I was really praying for Kirk Cousins, but like I said, I really think that this Broncos defense is coming together a little bit more. I do get to follow them the most, obviously, with all the people that I know in Denver. I really like that DeMarcus Ware has been at all the practices recently and is giving lots of insight to that team because they need a leader. That defense, losing Aqib Talib, I think was a good thing. I really love Von Miller. I think that he is the backbone of that defense, but DeMarcus Ware really was the leader of that Super Bowl team. Whether he was the big playmaker or not didn't matter. He got everybody together in the locker room, and then when he left, things kind of started to fall apart. So we'll see a couple different things, but more than anything, I'm going to piggyback off what Gabe said, the perception of the Denver Broncos is so down. Why? Well, you have John Gruden in Oakland. Now you have everybody, for some reason, super high on this Chargers team, and of course, the Chiefs, and so everybody's just naturally down on the Broncos. I think they win 7 games, and might be kind of, they're intriguing me. I don't think that they can necessarily win the AFC West, but there's definitely something there that I have circled going, okay, what am I missing here that this team's going to go 5-11 again?
It's going to be a convinced Joseph. I question his coaching ability. You talked about Elway. He's been wrong on so many quarterbacks over the last couple of years for a great quarterback, but I know we're on the clock, so I'm just going to say, fade the Oakland Raiders. Raiders overrated. Gruden's great in the booth. He's out of touch. His running backs are Marshawn Lynch and Doug Martin. Like, really? Got a drunk driver and a guy that smokes more weed than I do. It's a great combo, Coach. Let's get rid of Michael Crabtree and bring in Jordy Nelson, who, like I said, I think I'm in better shape
I was
than
just
Jordy
getting ready to say
Nelson.
that. I went to college with Jordy. Jordy's a really great guy. He was really great in Green Bay, but guess what?
He's done.
Derek Carr is not Aaron Rodgers. Derek Carr is not going to be able to hit on the numbers for him.
Perception. Raiders coming to Vegas. Raiders in Gruden. Ooh, Raiders this. 8.5. I don't like using the term free money because it's kind of a douchebag thing to say, but it's free money. Go under 8.5 for the Raiders.
Drew, thoughts on the AFC West?
I think the AFC West comes down to Chargers, Broncos, Week 17 in Denver. I think the winner of that game goes 10-6 and wins the West. I love the Chargers talent-wise. Joey Bosa's probably underpriced as Defensive Player of the Year. They have injury bugs, which people are like, oh, they're cursed. No, they're just a not well-run franchise. Like, they don't have good facilities. People aren't coming in for extra treatments.
They play in a soccer stadium.
They play in the They have no home field advantage. There is a litany of reasons that the Chargers will not exceed expectations.
The Chargers
even
are
as talented as
they're the Buffalo Bills of the West. Like, people don't realize it, but they are a cursed franchise. Like, there's something that'll just always stop them, and it's probably that the Spanos owns them. I would imagine. As they say in San Diego, right? You can't spell piece of shit without Spanos.
If they put more money into their franchise, I think you would see better performance. All that aside, great angle week 2. Denver in games in Denver are very, very tough on the opposing team traveling to altitude that early in the season when you're not in great shape. Oakland has a Monday Night Football game, the late game against the Rams, week 1. Turnaround, short week, head to Denver. Beautiful spot
Nice
to fade
spot
the
there,
Ravens.
yep.
Beautiful spot. I cannot wait to see what that line comes out as. There's almost certainly going to be value.
I'm
there.
intrigued by the Chiefs, and I got into a nice debate with our boy Babano. And, Babano singled out this. He said, Morency, the Kansas City Chiefs defense could have problems this year, and they really can't stop the run right now. But at the same point in time, Andy Reid has coached in the NFL, I believe, for 18 years. You know how many times he hasn't won more than 7.5 games in 18 years? Twice.
Long time.
So that's 16-2. Yeah. And so, is this guy, they don't have Marcus Peters anymore. Marcus Peters was suspended half the freaking time. They don't have, I'm a big Alex Smith guy, but I think Mahomes is the real deal. You bring in Sammy Watkins as well. You have Travis Kelce, Sammy Watkins, Kareem Hunt, and company. Good luck stopping that. I think people are underestimating the Chiefs. I think our boy Babana was right. They're going to play in some higher scoring games. I'm going to have to admit defeat in the argument. Their defense is going to be a little soft, and they're going to score some points. I think people are undervaluing the Chiefs a little bit this year. But
I think too, and what we're seeing, like you're saying, there's a classic over-exaggeration of what we keep hearing about Patrick Mahomes in practice. Yes, he's throwing a ton of interceptions in practice. That doesn't mean he's going to throw a ton of interceptions in a game. It's practice. The kid's still young. He's still learning. I think Andy Reid's going to get a good job and just keep him in his wheelhouse and his little box and say, okay, listen, we're not going to run maybe some of the plays we're running in practice that cause you to throw an interception.
I'm colder on the Chiefs. Bet the over. That defense is super bad.
Yep, spent all our time on the AFC, so we'll have a couple of minutes. We will speed date the NFC right now real quickly. Philadelphia Eagles.
I got something good for this one.
Much more interesting conference. Let's get it done in 23 seconds.
Look, see the clock's running right there. We're going to get after it.
We got to do the NFC in 19 seconds.
Yeah. Philadelphia Eagles opening up against the Atlanta Falcons. A lot of question marks. Carson Wentz in and out. Will not be in. Will they have a Super Bowl hangover? The Eagles finally get over the Super Bowl winner. We've been waiting 52 years and more than that. What's going to take place
Problem
here?
for the Philadelphia Eagles is, number one, we haven't had someone repeat as Super Bowl champion since 2003, so we're going back 15 years right now. Conversely, there's been a different winner in the NFC East for 13 consecutive years as well. So just if we're sitting here in Vegas, Kelly, the odds, right, are a little bit stacked against them. They're a very good football team. I think the Super Bowl hangover, it's not a hangover, they just have a target on their back. I think they're back in the playoffs, but I don't think they're winning the NFC.
I think they're not overvalued based on their season win total, but I think Vegas is going to overvalue them because the general public says, oh, they just won a Super Bowl. Oh, great. They just covered, what did they cover last year? They covered like 13 games. So there they are going, okay, wait, I need to bet this team, just like the New England Patriots. It doesn't mean they're not going to cover these games. It just means that the public perception is really high on them.
Drew, quick thoughts on the NFC. Who can dethrone the Philadelphia Eagles? Who poses the bitch? Because, again, we're looking at the Minnesota Vikings, the Packers coming back, the New Orleans Saints, the Atlanta Falcons. There's a lot of challengers. Who dethrones them?
I am more buying the Eagles than the rest of you guys, largely because I thought AFC East used to be relatively even. The Eagles are now clearly the class. I think they win the East comfortably. I'm not buying any of the Dallas Cowboys hype. And the Giants are still bottom feeders. Maybe the Redskins go 8-8 again. Okay, all that said, the NFC North, where you have the Packers and the Vikings, the winner of that, I like the Vikings personally just because, again, I think their defense, it was truly remarkable last year. The third down percentage stop, all across metrics that are stable, they were incredible. And they didn't even turn the ball over very often. They didn't have game-changing defensive scores. A couple of things bounced their way defensively this year, and you could even see a better performance out of that Vikings defense. That and the fact that, like the opposite of the Chargers, they put so much money and so much effort into running an absolute top-notch overall organization that, guys are in training rooms more often. They're watching more film. They like being at the facility. They all love the coach. It's a perfect match. You add Kirk Cousins to the mix to replace Case Keenum, which in my mind is a reasonable upgrade. You have unbelievable weapons on offense. The offensive line, a little scary, but if that unit comes together, and really I'm looking at the center, especially Pat Elflein, whatever his name is, Pat, if he's more injured than they're letting on and he misses significant time early in the season, then I'm starting to get a little scared about the Vikings. But I think they're probably the ones that knock the Eagles off. Get a little home field advantage. They play amazing in the back.
Kelly, final thoughts on the NFC. Who can knock off the Eagles?
Well, I'm a huge Vikings proponent. As you guys probably know if you follow me on Twitter, I love Coach Zimmer. I wrote it down earlier and it's not on this page, but it's like 44-23 against the spread. So how can you not love the guy? And I agree. Again, going back to my earlier comment about the Denver Broncos, I wish that we would have got Kirk Cousins as a Broncos fan, but I'm very happy he is in Minnesota. I think that offense is going to be just fine, no matter if it was him or Case under center. That being said, the defense still looks pretty solid to me. As far as anybody else that could knock off, no, I'm not high on the Dallas Cowboys either. I'm really low. Here's a final thought on the NFC West. San Francisco, talking about hype.
Overrated.
I never bet season win totals. I bet under 8.5 wins.
I'll tell you guys, though, I don't have somebody who could maybe probably knock them off. The team that's going to win the NFC this year is the Carolina Panthers.
Oh my goodness.
We talk. Well, we're here to give picks, not all right. So let me finish here. Okay, so the Carolina. This is what I talk about with perception and reality. Who's got the best ATS record out of Drew Brees and Matt Ryan and Jameis Winston out of the four quarterbacks?
I'm not sure, but I
It's
don't
Cam
know that
Newton.
it matters for the Carolina
All right,
Panthers
so I know
this
that
year.
the Carolina Panthers are terrible. I know they were 11-5 last year, right? In a dysfunctional freaking year with no weapons. I'll tell you right now, Christian McCaffrey is going to be one of the breakout superstar players in the National Football League this year. He's going to be big time. The kid Moore that they brought in is big time. Samuels isn't even legal to drink yet. And this kid, they have speed to burn. All they do every damn year is win double-digit games. The New Orleans Saints are good, but the Carolina Panthers and New Orleans Saints are like 1 and 1A. And they played in the playoffs. They had the same damn record last year. People walk around like the Panthers. It's a public perception. Cam Newton this, Cam Newton that. Rivera can freaking coach, man. And the Carolina Panthers, they draft well on a yearly basis. You know, it's been sort of a reloading process. They've had a lot of young players the last couple of years. They were a veteran team when they went to the Super Bowl. They've got a lot of young talent right now. They will win this division, plus 280. They're better in Atlanta. They're better in New Orleans. Carolina wins the division. And then, you know, I don't think it's great value at 12-1 to let these guys hold your money for 6 months. But I do believe that the Carolina Panthers will be the ones to represent the NFC this year.
Okay, rebuttal. They hired Norv Turner to run the offense. That guy runs 7-step drop backs with
Yeah, I
an
know. He's a
offensive line that
terrible
cannot
offensive
block.
coordinator, I
The
know.
offensive line is such a disaster. Cam Newton has had a history of head injuries. I worry about his personal safety and health this season. He is going to take shots that are going to scare you when you're like, they're walking him off the field. Is he going to be back playing football ever?
He's 6'4", 230 pounds. I think he'll be all right.
This spells so much disaster. The last time we saw Norv Turner as an offensive coordinator in this league, it was in a very similar situation with an offensive line that could not block, and he never adapted his approach. He kept doing 7-step drop back after 7-step drop back. He got Sam Bradford almost killed, for crying out loud. So this all smells trouble.
The window's there.
This all smells like trouble.
All right, how about this? How about this? Right now, we'll do this in front of the world right now. I'll bet you $500 on the win total of the Carolina Panthers right now. I go over.
What's the number?
9.
8.5.
Oh, the number's 9.
8.5.
The number's 9.
Under?
$500. 8.5.
I love it. That's okay.
Nobody's actually going
It
to pay
doesn't
that
matter
bet
to me.
out. That was done for theatrical
doesn't
purposes.
matter.
But look,
No, I want the money.
our hour is up. I want to thank everybody for participating today. We could have went another 3 to 4 hours here to go over it, the passion that we have for the NFL. I want to thank Drew. I want to thank Kelly and Gabe. Fantastic. Thanks for all of you for showing up here this weekend. You guys got a lot of things to do, a lot of money to win, hopefully, out there. Sit by the pool, get some beers, have fun, guys. Thanks once again for tuning in.
Thank you.
Questions? Come on. We got hours.
I'm getting so fired up. I'm breaking the mic now. I feel like it's like I'm on the set of Monday Night Raw. I'm like getting up, man. You better shut up, man.
Hey,
I'm just kidding.
question for Gabe. College football. Do you have a
who's
play
it?
to
College
follow up
football,
on FAU?
I don't follow college football. That's why I'm on the NFL panel. Listen, last year we gave you guys FAU 4.5. They won 11 games. I should have got paid like double for that pick. It's funny because FAU this year, their win total is 8.5, and people are like, well, you can't bet it now because it was 4.5 last year. Well, whatever, man. You know, a lot of things were different last year. You know, you can't bet what happened last year, think about what happened last year. I actually don't see this football team losing 4 games. Give me FAU plus 21 at Norman next week as well. But if we're looking for a nice sleeper college football win total, take the Pittsburgh Panthers over 5 wins. This is the year Narduzzi gets over the top. Last year they knocked off the Miami Hurricanes. The year before, Nate Peterman, it sucks so hard, beat Deshaun Watson at Clemson and the Clemson Tigers. 2 years in a row, the Pittsburgh Panthers have beaten one or number 2 ranked teams in the country. They're going bowling this year, which means they win 6 games. Take the Pittsburgh Panthers over 5 wins.
I got a question for Kelly. 8.5 wins for the Broncos. Over, do you give any chance of them actually winning the division?
So, we talked about that a little bit ago. Where'd you get 8.5?
I thought you said over 8.5
7.
wins. 7.
They're
Sorry.
Vegas is not high on. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm seeing 7.5, so at least offshore.
So
at least.
I'm going to piggyback off kind of what Drew said. I do think it comes down to the wire there. I'm not sold on the Raiders, so we'll knock them out. But then you do have the Chiefs and the Chargers late in November, December for the Broncos in Denver, as always. I do think it could come down to that Chargers game, but I'm not sold on the Chargers. It's not so much a homer pick with the Broncos, and like I said, I don't ever bet season win totals. I did take the over 7 with them. I think I laid a little bit of juice, like minus 140 or something.
There's a good chance the Broncos had the best draft of any NFL team last year.
I'm really excited for
it looks like
Raiders.
it looks like they have 4 guys who are going to contribute almost immediately, which is really impressive. And that's coming from a guy who hasn't drafted well at all in John Elway. So it's he swung for the fences and he may have hit some home runs this year.
I have one question. If I can get one pick from the panel, I don't care if the Eagles make it to the Super Bowl. We're gamblers. We're looking for ATS only. So if I can get your guys' thoughts on one team who's going to cover the most ATS throughout the year.
I'll go opposite of you. The worst ATS team in the league this year is going to be the Rams. The Rams have a sneaky, disastrously tough schedule. They are loaded with talent. People are expecting big things. They are going to be, favored, small favorites in lots and lots of games where it's going to be very, very difficult for them. They have a stretch in the middle of their season where where they're just playing back-to-back, just ridiculous teams, tough situational spots. If we look up at the end of the year, I'm expecting like 3-13 or something against the spread for the Rams.
Yeah, always look for teams like that, like you said, that are really overhyped. I'm going to talk about a team that we didn't get a touch on that is, I think, really kind of a dark horse for the NFC North and also very undervalued. It's the Detroit Lions. I say this a lot. If you guys follow me on Twitter, you know I don't like Matthew Stafford, minus a fantasy perspective. I think the guy, there's a lot to it. Also, he hasn't really been given very many good weapons over the years, but this kind of year, I'm kind of excited. I think their defense is going to be a lot better with head coach Matt Patricia, and I think we're going to see them start to cover a few games. Last year they were 5-1 in the division. I know Aaron Rodgers was beat up. I understand they get to beat up on the Bears as well, but I'm kind of looking for this guy who's got better touchdown and interception ratios more than anyone in the country. They're going to beat the Jets, Dallas, Miami, Chicago ×2, Arizona, Buffalo. They're going to have 7 wins, and I think that those are easily games they're going to cover as well. So look for the Lions to kind of beef up their ATS record this year.
A team that we didn't talk about actually at all is the New York Giants. A win total is 6.5 right now. I think this actually team could be a sneaky team and cover some point spreads. I'm not high on the Dallas Cowboys. You look at that division with the Redskins right now. They are who we thought they were, etc. 2 years ago the Giants were in the playoffs. They were a double-digit win team. I'm not saying Eli Manning. Eli Manning is, he is who he is. But speaking of weapons, he didn't have Odell Beckham last year. You're adding Odell Beckham. You're adding Saquon Barkley, who is going to be a superstar in the National Football League, and you got rid of that coach, who is arguably one of the worst coaches. We're getting a Richie Kotite territory here with the coach. So they actually have a competent coach here now with Schumer in the system. The New York Giants just have too much talent. Last year was an anomaly. Keep your eye on the Giants, actually. I like the Giants over 6.5 as a win total. I think the Giants cover some point spreads this year, a team we didn't talk about.
Yeah, way down the list. I'm going to look for some value out there. I like teams that are being downed in the preseason. One of the more interesting ones is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, Jameis Winston's going to be out for the first 3 games, right? Well, if you looked at their first 3 games, how many are they going to win anyway? I mean, you got, the Philadelphia Eagles on that schedule, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the New Orleans Saints.
It's the hardest opening 3 games in the history of the NFL if you add up the records.
So if people are factoring in, Jameis Winston getting suspended, what was he really going to bring to the table in the first 3? So now you're looking at week 4, they might be 0-3. Oh, Jameis is back. They're a terrible team. Just some value that you might find.
But you know what, Donnie? They're not winning. Their win total is 6.5. There's no way in hell. There's a better chance that I have hair next year when you see me than the Buccaneers winning 7 games. As you guys just stated, they're playing these first 3 games. After that, they're going to lose those 3 games. Yeah. And listen, you know what Jameis Winston's record is against the spread as a favorite? 3-12. All right, the guy's covered 3 times in his freaking career. All right, he's harassed more women in his life than he's covered point spreads. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers probably have the worst coach in the National Football League in Dirk Cutter. They have the stupidest offensive coordinator in the NFL, and Todd Monken. It was such a powerhouse. He went 1-11 with Southern Miss, and he got a job in the NFL because he's friends with Dirk Cutter. They're a joke of a franchise. There's not a shot in hell this team wins 7 games. They go 0-3. I don't know. I'm not a rocket science, but that means they have 13 games left. So that means they have to go 7-6 After they go in 3, yeah, as if. There's a better chance of Winston getting arrested before that happens.
I actually like Tampa to win one of those 3 games, and it's the 3rd one against the Steelers. The Steelers consistently underperform out of division early in the season. We saw it against Philly a couple years ago. We saw it against Bears last year. It's like you can set your clock by it. Week 3, they're going to let down against a bad NFC team. This year, it happens to be the Bucs, so look for the Bucs.
Yeah, I was going to say, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if they win. We just care if they cover.
Exactly. Yep.
Anybody else?
Good teams win, great teams cover, as they say.
All right.
I guess, can I add one more thought on the NFC?
Go ahead.
Okay. We didn't get to talk about the NFC a ton. It's a much more interesting conference overall, in my opinion. There are a ton of teams that are extremely good that are all legitimate contenders in the Falcons, the Saints, the Eagles, the Rams, and the Vikings and the Packers. That is 6 teams. It is going to be extremely difficult preseason to lock in the correct team that comes out of that 6, right? But if you look at the schedule, because they're all playing each other all season long, there is going the way to make money in the futures market this year in the NFC is going to be market entry. You find the week where a team has just finished a 4-game stretch that was brutal, and they're coming up on a couple of nice home games, and you buy into them then, and you lock up good numbers across at least 4 or 5 of those 6, and you're going to have a ticket that you're pretty happy with come the NFC title game.
All right.
We done?
Yeah, we're done.
I guess we done. And now you're going to see, we're all going to walk off. We're going to get like 50 million questions. Hey, what about the...
You didn't go over the Eagles.
Hey, great time. Shout out to SPR. Thanks for the hospitality. More importantly, shout out to all of you guys that came from all over the world, man, to come out and hang out with us here in Las Vegas for the weekend. It's all about you guys, people. It's all about you guys.